coming, the sun's zooming in, meltdown expected, the wheat is good there, engines stop running, but I have no fear, 'cause London is drowning. I live by the river.
Hello everybody and welcome to the By the Minute Arsenal podcast. We're back after a short break, short chance to refresh the batteries before we get into the business end of the season. I must be honest, when we went off I thought Burnley and the Southampton FA Cup game may not be too much to talk about anyway, might not be missing very much, but I was some way wrong with that, particularly with regards to the Burnley game. Just the two of us tonight. I am Matt H and I'm joined by Pete. Hello Pete.
Hello Matt, and a very good Monday evening to you.
Thank you very much. We don't have other Matt this week. He is not available. He'll be back next week, I'm sure, or if not, then very soon afterwards. Right, so yes, a bit of a break. Just as I say, we for various reasons, unavoidable. We had to take a short break, but let's get right onto it then. Get to Burnley. So a game that I think we probably thought would be a relatively straightforward win, given that Burnley's away form is truly terrible. Only 1 point, I think, in their 9 away games, however many it was before this. And we got the 3 points, but, well, it took a while. 2-1 to Arsenal with a penalty in the 97th minute, dinked home by Alexis. Well, I mean, where to start with this? The first thing to start maybe is the day before, the Saturday. Liverpool lost, United, City and Spurs all drew. So there was certainly a chance here, not to catch up with Chelsea necessarily, who of course did then go on to win on the Sunday, but certainly to pull, if not pull away from the rest, at least get the second place back. Pete, where do you want to start? I mean, I had the first half down as being fairly forgettable from what I remember of it.
It was, and of course it followed on from a number of pretty forgettable first halves where we've been getting quite concerned about the team's inability to start games quickly and not be playing very well in the first half. So I guess it was no surprise in that regard, but it wasn't as dire as others had been previous to that, the first half, but it was quite similarly that we controlled the game much more, and Burnley really weren't up to much in themselves in that first half. But it was the sort of game where you really hoped that we would get out of that run of slow starts, and we didn't. We carried along the same lines. And although something we'll come back to later, we should have had a penalty in that first half, I think. Although it might have been the beginning of the second, I've forgotten now. It's too long ago. But at least we got ourselves in front eventually, because it was when we knew everyone else had lost, it was desperately important that we won and got back into second place. And so we can be relieved that we did in the end, but the manner of it may not have been exactly what we would have chosen.
Yeah, I mean, let's get into the manner of it. So the sort of good and bad and ugly in here, and probably a whole variety of other emotions and whatnot in between. So let's start with sort of the good news. Let's start with the Mustafi scoring to take the lead just before the hour, which is excellent news. He still hasn't lost a game, I believe, as an Arsenal player yet. So that's very pleasing. And you thought that was... Sorry, go on.
Well, it was just nice to see him get his first Arsenal goal, and something we might have expected him to do a bit earlier, I think, because I think he had a pretty good record for scoring at Sevilla. And it was nice to see him get that first one under his belt, and maybe he'll pop up with a few more. Then again, it was some pretty dreadful defending by Burnley, wasn't it? Which was odd, considering how solid they'd been up until that point. It was just somebody fell asleep. They didn't put anyone on the post. He was first to the ball quite clearly, and just a nice little tuck away into the corner, which gave the goalie no chance. So, yeah, lovely to see.
And then you think, first goal, hour-ish gone, marvellous. We're away now. That'll be fine. I was rather selfishly hoping for a much better first half performance, because I wasn't able to see the second half because I had to be on a train. But I'll take, I was happy to take that goal, and you think, oh great, that'll be that now. We'll be fine. But then things happened, and let's start with Granit Xhaka, who. I say again only because he's been obviously sent off previously, but again it was a somewhat he saw red this time for, I don't think there was much argument, to be frank, about the red card, there's been lots of discussion about this since he's ended up with a 4-game ban, I think. I mean, where do we start with this? His record, he was slated for his sort of overall record, but you had when we chatted briefly before this, you had a slightly different take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's really worth talking about his previous record and how he got there, particularly as in terms of his record with us, his red card earlier this season was totally undeserved, and I don't believe he deserves the criticism for having got 2 red cards within a small amount of games. I don't think that's the point, because the first one wasn't deserved at all. It was a straightforward trip that people get yellow cards for any day. I mean, Arsene Wenger described it as a dark yellow or something, and I thought at the time, well, no, it wasn't. It was just a yellow. He tripped someone up. It potentially looked a bit violent, but it really wasn't. It was just a trip, nothing more than that. And he didn't deserve that. I think what he does deserve criticism for is just being stupid enough to get sent off in a game of what was at that time quite great magnitude, because we did need to win it to get back to re-establish ourselves above the other chasers. And to do it with 20 minutes left with absolutely no need, he'd made a mistake, and I think you can slightly forgive the fact that it's probably just a reaction to making a mistake and being desperately keen to salvage the situation, but it's daft. It was stupid. He didn't need to do it, and to put us down to 10 men in a game that we're totally comfortable in was just ridiculous. So he does deserve criticism just for that.
So our point is not necessarily that he has a particularly good or bad record as such. It's a slightly wider issue, well, a particular issue in terms of this game, in terms of how bad that could have been for the team, but the slightly wider issue of he just needs, and Arsene Wenger has said since the incident that he needs to sort out his tackling. Basically, he said it in a much more nice Arsene Wenger way, but that's essentially what he was saying. Read between the lines, stay on your feet, don't do daft stuff, don't jump in. I mean, because apart from that, he's been, I think, an excellent addition to the Arsenal team. But there's always these. There's always this talk about Arsenal having more aggression and getting into it. This isn't that. This is just not stupidity. I don't want to be too extreme, but it's just slight mindlessness, for want of a better word. It's just a bit daft when it doesn't have to be. So this isn't the same as having some bite in the tackle. This is just daft. It's just putting a team at a huge disadvantage for no obvious reason.
Yeah, and in general, up to now, I think he's managed that aggression quite well. And it was quite odd, as I say. I mean, he has been what we've felt we needed for quite a while, which is somebody who can put it about a bit. But he's managed it. As I say, the first sending off was ridiculous, so unfair on him. But this was totally his fault. And the only other time I can think that I really felt he did something daft again was the penalty he gave away against. Was it Stoke or was it?
I know what you mean. The guy was sort of just inside the area, wasn't he? And he just sort of got in the way. I think I've got Stoke in my head, so it could well have been that one.
That was appalling, and that even wasn't about aggression. That was just, what are you doing, trying to take the ball off the guy just as he's run into the penalty area? He's not any great threat. He's going out of the penalty area, and just leave him alone. But
so what we're talking about here is just elimination of a few mistakes, whether it's a slightly hot-headed thing or something. We have other Arsenal players who we very much like. Koscielny springs to mind, who, whilst brilliant, still occasionally makes errors. So we can put up with the errors. I think it's almost the magnitude and the timing of them that have been the factor with Xhaka. Maybe he's just been unlucky in that sense. Yeah,
and this one particularly.
Yes. He's also obviously a bit of a spiky character. You can see he likes to get involved, which is again not a bad thing in my mind. Having said that, there was this. We're not going to go into it now because I don't know any more details. But this talk of an incident at an airport, then a couple of days later, which isn't particularly. Well, I don't know if we'll ever find out what actually happened. But obviously there was a suggestion of abuse of one type or another dished out by him. So, people say things in the heat of the moment that they know they shouldn't. But that seems to fit in with the impression I'm sort of developing of him. That very talented, but perhaps a bit of a short fuse, to put it mildly.
Yeah, well, whatever happens, let's not all end up wearing Xhaka is innocent t-shirts.
Yes, I like to think we've got some standards, and we won't quite get down that far. But that's a very good point. I have a little note here. Now, the note was made over a week ago as the game was going on, so I can't quite remember the background to it. But I had a note about Koscielny and a hamstring injury, but I haven't heard anything about that since. So do we assume there isn't anything much? Obviously, even if there was a tweak, he's had a week more than a week to sort it out.
Let's hope so. I must admit I hadn't heard that. So
yeah, I made a note. I don't know what it was. Whether I saw something or whatever. I'm not sure what happened. I mean, he didn't come off against Burnley. He stayed on for the whole game. So maybe I was just a stream of consciousness on my part. Anyway, there we are then. A few minutes to go. In fact, we're into stoppage time, and it was Coquelin, wasn't it, who gave away the penalty for Burnley? I don't think, having seen it later on, there was any doubt about that one.
No, in a thoroughly Flamini style, he decided to give away a penalty, again for no particularly good reason, and he deserves as much criticism for Xhaka. The only mitigation on his part, I guess, is that Xhaka had got himself sent off and had put the team in a difficult position, which meant that Coquelin ended up in the penalty area desperately trying to make a last-minute challenge, which again wasn't really. There was no great danger. He shouldn't have done it. He was daft. So it's 1-1. We're into the 7th minute of injury time, whatever it is, and Koscielny takes a boot to the face and penalty the other way. Now, I mean, Sanchez, after his little hissy fit against Swansea, talking of Xhaka losing his cool, Sanchez kept his superbly with the dink down the middle to take the 3 points. Yeah, after missing his last 2 penalties, I think.
Yeah, which is quite something to get yourself organised to be able to do that.
Beautiful. As I think I said to you at the beginning of the season, there's absolutely nothing better than a last-minute penalty where the goalkeeper just dives out of the way.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter who it's against, does it? It doesn't matter if it's in the fourth round of the Cup against Minnow, or if it's against Man United away, or whatever. It'd be a delightful way to win any football match.
Yeah, thank you for that, Alexis.
Very good. I mean, the game that came to mind as I was sitting on my train, sort of deep breathing to recover from the excitement, was the Liverpool game a few years ago, which was the other way round. In that we took the lead very late, didn't we? There were 12 minutes of injury time I have in my head. Well, that's the note I made.
Yeah.
And then we went 1-0 up, and then in the 12th minute, it was it Eboué or was it Kola?
Eboué. Yes, it was Eboué decided to run 30 yards in order to knock someone over in the penalty area.
Yeah, and of course, and it was only for a draw, I think. We didn't lose the game, if I remember rightly. But obviously we didn't win it, and I can't remember what year that was, 2008-ish or something maybe. But yeah, that was the thing that I immediately thought of. I know it didn't have quite the same magnitude as a game against Liverpool, but those 3 points, could be so important come the end of the season. The ones we picked up last Saturday. Yeah,
fantastic win and fantastic way to get it in some ways, and tough luck, Sean Dyche.
Yeah, he seems like a pleasant enough chap, but he can't really have too many complaints about the penalty, I don't think, on Koscielny. Someone who did have some complaints and will have to suffer some small consequences from that is our very own Arsene Wenger, of course. Now, I don't know if you have a particular view on this. He's obviously accepted the charge of whatever, I don't know what the proper name is, not violent conduct, but whatever the thing is, and he's got a 4-game touchline ban.
Roughing up official?
Roughing up an official. It's something along those lines, isn't it? I can't remember quite what the charge is. But he's accepted a 4-game ban, only a touchline ban though, so it's essentially no big deal for him, I don't think. He can still talk to Steve Bould and do all the rest of it. It's 25 grand, which I imagine is even less of a factor for him. But I just wondered if you had any thoughts about him getting in that position in the first place. I mean, I don't want to criticise, but he shouldn't be laying his hands on the fourth official.
No, he shouldn't.
I don't know if there's anything else we can add to that. But
I can't talk seriously about that. I mean, I would say that, people complain that he doesn't show enough passion and interest and shoutiness on the bench, so I think there's no bad thing to see him occasionally demonstrating just how much he does care. And, whatever. Happens to the best of us, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, we all lose the temper and do stuff. I mean, some of the stuff that's been in the press since it happened, it's like people really wanted to make some kind of example of him. When he's only done this twice, I think, when he's been sent off. I must be honest, when I read that, I assumed it was a lot more than that, but apparently it's only been a couple of times. But the press seem to be looking for a scapegoat of some description.
Yeah, he's not Alan Pardew. He's not Jose Mourinho.
No, God no.
He's Arsene Wenger, and he had a bad moment. There you go. Let's move on.
Well, let's move on then. Nicely done. To a much more relaxing afternoon, which was early evening really. This Saturday, FA Cup 4th round, we were away to Southampton, a team that have given us a little bit of trouble over the last few years. But they didn't on Saturday. They pretty much rolled over for an Arsenal 5-0 win. 3 from Walcott, but 2 even more enjoyable goals perhaps from Danny Welbeck. There's just so many. This is such a nice game to talk about because I genuinely cannot think of a single bad thing to say. Kick us off, Pete. Anything in particular you'd like to pull out?
Thoroughly enjoyable from start to finish, I think, is what I felt about it. And that I think I was trying to think what was my favourite moment of the whole game, and I think it was Welbeck's first goal, just because it involved so many beautiful things. It was a lovely pass from Coquelin, an absolutely wonderful ball through from Lucas, and Welbs read it, got there, dinked it over the keeper off the crossbar. What more could you ask for? And on his first start back after how many months out, just fantastic. And just a glorious start to the game that just carried on. It was it was the point. It was strange to see that the team play so well and have such a quick start after not having done that in the previous 8 or 9 games. So. Yeah. It was that was nice to see, even with a very much changed team.
Well, I mean, that's the fascinating thing, isn't it? Because you've got 10 changes for Southampton, but also 10 changes for Arsenal, even though the Arsenal team probably looked a little more solid, more of a known quantity, perhaps, to the Arsenal fans at least. Maybe that's it. Maybe making these changes, letting these players off the leash, if you like, meant something happened, and they did just go for it. We must admit, though, against what turned out to be a pretty poor Southampton 11. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's these guys took their chance. I mean, there were so many great individual performances. Lucas being one. Oxlade-Chamberlain for me, though, but absolutely marvellous. His range of passing was wonderful to watch.
It was fantastic, and it does look like maybe central midfield will be the position that he eventually gets to take up for Arsenal. But I think that's probably quite a long way away. But if he can play like that in bigger games against better opposition, then he's made for it, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean it's just superb to watch. Let's pick out the other performances then. So, I mean, Walcott, it's almost the quietest hat-trick you expect someone to get. I think so much focus on Welbeck, and Walcott pops up with 3 nicely taken goals.
Yeah, very nicely taken goals, weren't they? And very in a very, again, Walcott style that he didn't really appear to be very much involved in the game, but then was there at important moments to just pop it into the net. And it does look like maybe he can continue to get back into the side and keep that run going that he was. He does seem to be scoring a lot more goals this season, and it was nice to imagine that hopefully he can continue to keep that up. Let's hope so.
Let's hope so. And a word for Welbeck, of course, after so many months out. I know we mentioned him briefly just now, but 2, you alluded to the first one, 2 beautifully taken goals. We got a little bit lucky with this second, I think.
Yeah, the second, I mean, I was watching on television and the commentary said what a wonderful first touch it was. No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. He missed it, didn't he? I mean, he did well still to get his foot on it and just do enough to direct it between the keeper's legs and in. So he deserves credit for that. But yes, I'm glad it wasn't just me who spotted that one.
No, but he did it. It was good enough to get to it, as you say, and get his foot on it and get it on target and get it through the keeper's legs. Good on him. I mean, that's just fantastic to see him come back. But he does this, doesn't he? He did it against Leicester. After a period out, first came back, he'll just be magnificent. So, good on him and lovely to see. And I wonder if he's going to be pushing for Giroud's place.
Well, this is interesting, isn't it? I mean, since the start of the season, when obviously we've gone through the sort of changes where it now seems to be the case that which for a while it was. It's Sanchez he's our man, he's our guy up top on his own. There's been a bit of a slight move then, with Giroud being involved, and now we've got these other options. You've got Welbeck, and then you've got, I know it's not quite the same position, but you've got Walcott. And I think everyone's agreed now that Walcott's best position is not through the middle. I think, and up front. I think even he's probably admitted that now. But you've got these other you've got so many attacking options there potentially to sort of weave together in a certain way. I mean, I was going to come on to this later. I'm wondering how many of the team that started on Saturday are going to be starting against Watford or indeed against Chelsea, and I'm guessing not that many, but it's great to know they're there and obviously more than competent, which is more than the Southampton team were on Saturday.
Yeah, a good question, and just a quick mention for one of the people who probably won't be, which is Lucas, who I thought almost was man of the match in some ways. Okay, he didn't score 2 goals or get a hat-trick, but for a guy who doesn't play that much, and he just seems to know exactly how to play in an Arsenal team when he does play. I was going to say that one of the things that struck me about the game, particularly in relation to the fact that there were so many changes on both sides, was that the players that came in for us knew the system, knew what they were doing, and looked like they were just a team that plays together all the time. Whereas Southampton were just looking at each other like, who are you? Where are you going? What are you doing? But I think one big advantage we got at Arsenal is that when we do change the team that much, the players are just ready for the system and understand what they're going to be doing, what other players are going to be doing, and it works really well. And I think Lucas is just amazing to be able to fit into that. As I say, I'm not trying to advocate for him to be playing more often or to be playing on Tuesday or against Chelsea, but it just seems to me that I thought he just looked, again, just great on the night, as did, to be honest, everyone. I mean, let's face it, there's no one. The young kids were great. Holding was great as well at the back. It was just everyone played their part, didn't they? It was a real team performance, and I think that's what shone through compared to. I mean, Southampton made it easy, but what made it easy was we looked like a team that knew what we were doing, and they looked like a bunch of people who'd never met. Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad you mentioned Lucas because I'd forgotten I was going to mention him because of how good he was. I was a word from Maitland-Niles as well. The stats that BT threw up at the end of the coverage suggested he was top of the completed passes and most touches stats, and that's on either team sort of combined. So you made a reference to the youngsters, and he was one that's certainly worth mentioning because he did superbly. I will mention Matt, who's not with us this evening. He did, when I was doing this by the minute, he did note that you can tell Steve Bould had something to do because we had four central defenders on the bench. Sorry, 4 defenders: Jenkinson, Mertesacker, Gabriel, and Monreal. I assume that's, of course, because people are being rested. I don't think Steve Bould is actually staging a coup of any type. But let's face it: if we win 5-0 every time Arsene's in the stands, there may be something to that.
There you go. So he should push more fourth officials then.
Yeah. Well, if he's going to do that, he might as well just punch them. I mean, really go for it. If you're going to get, sent to the stands anyway, then enjoy yourself.
Yeah, that's something I'd like to see.
I will mention one other thing about this game. Bringing Sanchez on for the last, however long it was, 25 minutes. Is this a sop just to keep him happy, or did they just want to give Welbeck a rest? I mean, maybe it's just a bit of both, and it's handy that Alexis is on the bench. As we've said, you weren't going to put any of the central defenders on, or the defenders on, but they could have had another young kid come on and be on the bench. I just thought it was interesting that Alexis had that 25 minutes. I don't know if maybe we shouldn't read anything much into it at all. Yeah,
well, I think you couldn't play Welbeck for longer than he did, probably. So long out. You want to look after him a bit, make sure he doesn't do anything silly, and why not put Alexis on? I don't think it was Alexis desperate for it. I mean, he probably did want to play because, if you've travelled that far, you're in the squad, you're on the bench, you probably do want to have a go. But I don't think it was about just keeping him happy. But Welbeck was going to come off, so as you say, who else do you replace him with? Might as well be Alexis, and there you go. He gets a chance to score a goal, and because he obviously would like to. He wants to play and he wants to score. And
yeah. I can see Welbeck had to come off. I was slightly surprised there wasn't someone else on the bench, but let's not complain. He was involved in, I think, 2 of the goals. My mind's gone slightly. I think Sanchez had a hand in both of the last, the 4th and 5th goals, the 2nd and 3rd Walcott goals.
Theo's 3rd was again a ball from midfield from Oxlade-Chamberlain, Sanchez, and then set up Walcott for a tap-in. Well, it wasn't that much for tap-in, but
Well, look, it was all good. That's the bottom line for that game. It was all good in every way we can possibly think.
Indeed, yes.
So, we're doing this on Monday night. The draw has just been made for the 5th round. I joked earlier that I would like Arsenal to get Sutton at home. Well, it hasn't quite worked like that. It is Sutton away is the virtually live FA Cup draw news. Any thoughts on that one? I mean, will they still play it at Sutton? Because this is an obvious opportunity to swap games and make a bit of cash. Swap grounds. B, I'm assuming we should be thinking of a win for this game.
I would hope so. I would hope we won't do a Leeds there. If we do, then I think there'll be a lot of very upset Arsenal fans.
Yeah. With the greatest respect to Sutton, of course, I think the way we've been playing recently, and this game is not that far away. It's only the end of next month, so sorry, it's not even the end. It's the 17th, 18th, and 19th of Feb, so it's only a few weeks away. So yes, we should be looking. You would assume to go through.
Yeah, that's about the best draw we could hope for, I think.
Yeah.
Other than, as you said, if it was at home, but maybe it will be.
Maybe it will be. We'll see about that. Yes. Well, that's great. Well, God, we're going to have to try and preview a Sutton game. I'm going to have to do some Sutton research, which we'll leave that for a couple of weeks, and then we'll have to think about that. Sorry, go on.
They play in yellow.
There you go. You're a start. And I know one of them's a builder because all the news today has been I was at the building site on Friday, and on Sunday I'm winning the cup or whatever. Winning the cup game. So there you go. There's 2 bits of information already.
Excellent. They've probably got an Arsenal fan in there somewhere.
Oh, they're bound to, or a Spurs fan. Just to give that side of it as well. So
nice.
Marvellous. Well, brilliant link to another team in yellow, ish. We'll do a couple of quick previews. Arsenal-Watford tomorrow night. That's Tuesday night at home, 7:45. Watford are not having a good time of things at the moment. Apart from the fact they lost on was it Sunday? I can't remember which day it was now. But they lost in the cup at the weekend. It was Millwall, wasn't it? They lost to, so it was yesterday, I think. Oh no, it was Saturday. It doesn't matter. They lost over the weekend. But more personally for us, perhaps, they are having a pretty terrible run in the league. Their last win in the league was way back on the 10th of December at home to Everton. We should be, I say this a lot doing these things, but we should be looking at another 3 points here surely tomorrow. I mean, Watford are actually below Burnley in the league, just below Burnley in 14th, but they're having a terrible run at the moment. We should be looking at 3 points here.
We should be. It's going to be interesting. The most interesting thing is what team Wenger puts out for it, I think. I mean, any team he puts out should be capable of beating Watford at home at the moment. So I don't think their FA Cup result really makes much. They played a very different team for that. But their league form is pretty poor. They're at our place. I can only think that if we don't win it, then we've messed it up ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, look, their last 6 matches, if we just take the last 6 matches, they would be 1 off the bottom ahead of Palace. In fact, if we take the last 10 matches, they'd be 1 off the bottom ahead of Palace. Whereas we would be 5th in the last 6 matches and up to 3rd if we take the last 10. So, yeah, I mean, we should be looking at a fairly comfortable win, but we'll see. This, of course, is the end of that that set of 6 league games we talked about winning, we've so far won 4 of them and drawn 1. If we can win 5 and draw 1, I think we're going to have to take it, aren't we? Well, obviously there's not much we can do if we can't send the points back, but it probably wouldn't be too bad given how the teams around us have done, with the exception of Chelsea, unfortunately.
No, well, I think we'd have taken that certainly right at the beginning if we knew the position it would lead to, which is second place, isn't it? And we couldn't stop Chelsea having won every game, so or have doing as well as they have since then. So I think 5 wins and a draw would be pretty reasonable from those 6, and would take us into that Chelsea game with some hope, particularly if there's an interesting result against Liverpool for Chelsea.
Yeah, well, let's go straight there then. So the game that we've been, and I say we've been waiting for, I don't think we have been waiting for it, but the game that we've been unable to avoid, but it's been on the horizon, and we've been obviously moving towards it steadily and unavoidably. Away to Chelsea on Saturday, 12:30 kickoff. Chelsea top of the home and away form tables, and Arsenal indeed in 3rd place on both of those. Well, we don't know what the team's going to be like tomorrow. We don't know what it's going to be like on Saturday. Would you envisage not the same 11, i.e. perhaps a few of those second string reservers being played tomorrow, and then back to the full strength, whoever Arsene decides that is, on Saturday?
I don't know. I think it's difficult. I think he's got to take both games very seriously. I think he's got to play what he feels is his best team at the moment against Watford as much as he has against Chelsea. I don't think it will be about resting players. If anything, I think, as I say, after you've had a break, an FA Cup game where you've played a very changed game, you really need to find a way to get your best team back together and to make sure they remember how to play together. So it's going to be interesting to see his selection against Watford. We're limited in midfield in our options. Will he maybe try? The thing I'm wondering is whether he'll try something against Watford, such as Oxlade-Chamberlain in midfield, in central midfield, just to see if maybe he can keep that up. And if so, maybe he might go into the Chelsea game with that in mind. But has Welbeck done enough to possibly get a try against Watford? I think the likelihood is that against Watford that maybe Giroud won't start, and that we will get back to playing a more mobile front 3. So it might be Welbeck, Sanchez and Walcott, for instance, starting it. To try and get us back to that situation and that style of play before we go into a game against Chelsea where we're probably going to, where I can't see us playing any other way and winning. I think we've got to play that way against Chelsea. That we're going to need to get at their defence really quickly, and I think the Watford game is now almost like a warm-up for that.
Yeah, I mean that sounds like a reasonable summation situation, because obviously what we don't want to do is lose or not pick up the full points against Watford and then have problems with the 2nd, 3rd, 4th place. We have to be realistic. The league title is not out of range yet, but it's some distance away. You have to. I mean, look at Spurs last year. They were understandably focusing on the title chance they had, but ended up with us sneaking past them at the end. I know it's not quite the same thing, but we don't want to be in a position where we start scrapping for the top 4 like we have done in previous years. So, if you get a draw at Chelsea, I'm almost tempted to think I would take it. Although, obviously, more than that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I guess to some extent, again, it depends what the result against Liverpool is. Chelsea's result against Liverpool is before we go into that game. Should Liverpool win that, then, we could beat Chelsea and be only 2 points behind them. And that has really opened things up again.
When you put it like that does sound a lovely set of circumstances if we can get those all engineered for us.
It would be nice, wouldn't it? But of course, it does mean Liverpool winning, and that's pretty unlikely at the moment.
Yeah, they are a pretty shambolic team, which seems very odd to me because they looked pretty good at times, but shows how things can change just over a few weeks. well, I think we'll end it there then. So we'll be back next week for a review of the Watford and Chelsea game. Shame we couldn't laugh at Spurs for the FA Cup this week. We came so close to being able to do that, but they just managed to sneak past Wickham. So
yeah, very unfairly, I think.
Yeah, well, very unfair on all counts that they were able to do that and that we couldn't laugh about it. But I didn't see who they got in the draw. Did you?
No, I was so chuffed to have the game against Sutton to look forward to. I just forgot about the rest of it. Blackburn playing Man United.
Blackburn Man United. Tottenham are away to Fulham. Okay, so it's not impossible that they'll suffer again there. Right. Anyway, let's not worry about Spurs in the Cup. We don't care about that.
No.
Thank you. We'll wrap it up. Thank you very much, Pete, for your company.
Thanks very much, Matt. I hope we're both in just as good a mood the next time we speak.
That's it. I'm fine now. It's Monday. It's all good. I'm hoping that the Watford game will be okay. As we go towards Saturday, yes, things will inevitably get more unpleasant. But fingers crossed. At least it's going to be early on the Saturday, so we get it out of the way one way or the other. All right. Well, thank you for that, Pete. And cheers for listening. And we'll be back next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.